Welcome to the Early Warning Systems training series. This video is prepared by staff at the Everyone Graduates Center based at Johns Hopkins University in partnership with the New Mexico Department of Education and the High Plains Regional Educational Cooperative. The videos and breakout activities are designed to help your school team implement the planning, design, and problem solving for the implementation of an early warning system. We recommend that you watch and complete these activities with a representative team from your school that will be leading the implementation of your early warning system. The team should include the following: at least one administrator, at least one teacher, a counselor, an individual who excels at using your student information system, and other school leaders or representatives. As we discussed in the overview video, early warning systems are made up of accurate, reliable, and predictive data combined with multi-tiered response systems and school structures for adults to make decisions about what students need. This video will focus on setting up data systems, including background information on key pieces of data that are needed, suggestions for organizing the data, and recommendations for creating focus lists to help your team respond. Researchers from Johns Hopkins and other institutions around the country have looked at many different student behaviors, achievements, or characteristics with the goal of identifying the appropriate area of focus in order to impact the dropout rate, high school graduation, and post-secondary success. By following students across a number of years through longitudinal data sets, we have found three key indicators that can accurately predict students who are most likely to stay engaged and achieve at high levels, and those students who are most likely to disengage and drop out before high school graduation. These three indicators are student attendance, behavior, and course grades, or the ABCs.
One of the key questions that we posed ourselves and other researchers have looked at is how early can we identify students who, absent intervention, have very low odds of graduating. We looked at a lot of different years, a lot of different combinations of variables, a lot of different possibilities. And what we came out with is that as early as 6th grade in a high poverty environment, it's possible to identify up to half the kids who, absent effective intervention, have very low odds of graduating. And what we found is that it was the kids that didn't attend school often, the kids that got in trouble, even sustained mild misbehavior, and the students that failed math or English in 6th grade in high poverty environments typically had only a 1 in 5 or even less chance of graduating. We then, asked ourselves to double check this: do kids that do well on these variables, do students who come every day, who get good grades, who don't get in trouble, do they graduate at higher numbers? And as you can see in this slide from Philadelphia, that's in fact what we found. In fact, there's almost a 4-to-1 difference in your odds of graduating between students who come every day and those that miss a month of school, between those that don't get in trouble and those that do, between those that get good grades and those that fail math and English. So this told us that these indicators were very powerful at letting us know who's waving their hands, who's saying, help, I'm in trouble, I'm falling off track, I need some help to get back on track. And the powerful thing is that these are very clear signals from data that all our schools collect every day. Let's look at in some more detail now at some of the core research findings on each of these important indicators of whether a student is on or off track to high school graduation and college readiness. The Chicago Consortium for School Research, for example, has demonstrated the powerful impact of freshman grades, or that's 9th grade in high school. We can see from this chart that students that have F and D averages seldom graduate, that students that have A and B averages almost always graduate, and it's those C kids that are on the bubble. They could go either way. If we look at the next slide, we see that in Los Angeles we find similar patterns, and what's important about the Los Angeles data is it also shows us the impact of middle grade grades. It's not just 9th grades that matter. This chart clearly indicates that failing multiple courses in middle grades throws students off track, and with each additional course they fail, their odds of graduating get lower. In fact, this data actually shows that the middle grades have even a bigger impact on future graduation for each additional course you fail than the high school grades. The next slide shows us attendance. Here again, we're using some data from the Chicago Consortium looking at the 9th grade. And again, you can see the dramatic shift in odds between students who come every day, only miss less than 4 days per semester, versus those students that are missing a month or more. The odds swing dramatically 3, 4, 5, 6, even 8-to-1 at the most extremes. So if we put all this together, another thing we've learned is that the doing poorly in attendance, behavior, course performance means you're highly not likely to graduate. Doing good in those things means you're much more likely to graduate. So our goal is to drive down the negative side of these indicators and drive up the positive ones. So again, from Chicago and elsewhere, we found that GPA really matters. Students with high GPAs, B or better, are really on the path to college success. Students with Fs and Ds are really in trouble. Now we're going to talk a little more about what we've learned in detail about attendance, behavior, and course performance. In attendance, we've learned that missing 10% or school, or that's essentially 20 days or 18 days in a year, a month of school is a way to conceptualize it, is really problematic for kids. And any student that's missing 10% or more of school at any time of the year is some student we should pay attention to. We've also seen that it's the students who thrive or those that miss 5 or fewer days. So we really want to encourage really good attendance while we're working to limit really poor attendance. We've also found that those kids in the middle, just like we saw with Chicago data and the kids with Cs, we have to sort of pay some attention to. It's kids that miss between 10 and 19 days are not out of trouble. They're sort of on the bubble. They could go either way. And we should just keep an eye on those kids and make sure that other things aren't falling apart for them, and try to understand if it was just a one-time blip, they were sick, they went on a family trip, or is this the signs of a more reoccurring problem that's just beginning? Because the students we should mobilize the most against are those that don't have a prior history of chronic absenteeism, but this year are becoming chronically absent, because that tells us whatever is triggering that event has just happened. There's been some change in school or out of school that's now making a student that used to come to school every day not come to school. That tells us we really need to mobilize now and figure out what it is and redirect and change that, because it's very fresh and perhaps more likely something we can solve more quickly. Let's look at behavior now. Behavior, it's becoming more and more clear to everyone that, we can't suspend lots of kids, especially for small offenses. That's counterproductive, that having kids behave better by sending them out of school doesn't lead to better behavior. The evidence is clear, and it leads to less schooling. We wanted to conceptualize this as sort of the adolescent equivalent of a timeout, but it's much more interpreted by kids as the equivalent of being shunned. And if you feel shunned, you then sort of act out and push back. You don't sort of change your behavior. So we really need to work to limit suspensions and really save them for the most egregious offenses that nothing else really is appropriate for. But we also learned in our data that sustained mild misbehavior is almost as problematic as being suspended for students' long-term odds of success in graduating and being able to succeed in college. And that simply means the student that's sent to the office often, who's routinely gets detention, that we have to understand and be concerned about these behaviors and these outcomes too, and try to understand what their source is and problem solve them. Because the evidence is clear that students with sustained mild misbehavior, short of being suspended, but continually in trouble, also have low odds of graduating. Last, but certainly not least, and perhaps most importantly, is course performance. The data and evidence is clear that from a student point of view, while the test scores matter, and it's important for students to demonstrate that they have a solid understanding of course content and course knowledge, that what matters more for their long-term success is that they get good grades, and that they earn these good grades, and these good grades reflect being able to do good schoolwork. It's students with high GPAs and modest test scores do much better in college and graduate at higher levels than students with slightly higher test scores and worse grades. So grades really do matter. And we really want to drive up the number of kids that have a B or better average, because that tells us that across a range of teachers, the students show they can do independent work. And that's really the core signal that you are ready for college, that you can do independent work and understand the different styles and needs and expectations of a range of adults. That's why that is such a strong signal. By the same token, it's very clear we need to really drive down the number of kids that are getting Ds and Fs, not by giving them Cs, but by giving them the supports they need and understanding the dynamics behind that low grade, and whether it's a lack of understanding of a key concept, they need extra instruction and support, or is it more a social emotional issue where they just don't see the point and they're frustrated, or they've been absent and they feel lost and they don't really want to talk, they don't feel secure enough to ask the teacher for help. There could be all kinds of reasons. We really have to understand what's behind that D and F and find a solution to turn that D and F into a B.
We have seen it be most effective when your team is able to have a full student profile that compiles their attendance, behavior, and course performance data all in one place. For schools that have this in different systems, or don't yet have access to a system that compiles this information, school teams can pull the information together for the students they would like to discuss. When organizing this data, we have seen that creating an on and off track or stoplight metric can help easily see where levels of high or low achievement are. In addition to the on and off track definitions, many schools have found it valuable to add 2 further categories. The first is a sliding category to help identify those students who are in between and we want to prevent from falling off track and push towards higher achievement. The second category, which we have called high achievement or college ready, identifies students who are achieving at high levels in each indicator. This is built off of the findings that students who achieve at high levels in high school, for instance a B+ or higher grade point average, are more likely to enroll in and complete post-secondary training. The metrics you see here are compiled from research and practical experience around the country. As you continue deepening implementation and tracking data at your site, you may find that you may need to adjust the cut points. At this point, please pause the video and take 3 to 5 minutes to answer the following questions on the screen with your team. These questions are to help you locate and organize your data and determine the best format that helps your team in making decisions. If this information and ABC data are housed in different systems, or you aren't able to examine all of this information together, you may need to pull information from multiple sources. Many schools have exported reports from their data system and used versions of Excel spreadsheets to help them organize this information. Even if this is challenging to complete for the entire school, this can sometimes be done for a smaller number of students who will be discussed in detail by the team. This also enables the school teams to examine indicators over time to see progress and to look at potential relationships between indicators. After determining how you will organize your data, sites often move on to creating focus lists to help coordinate and organize responses and supports. Focus lists are lists of students that need support, usually those who have off-track indicators. Teams use these lists to coordinate which interventions and responses are appropriate for which students, and oftentimes have a list for each indicator. For instance, a 9th grade focus list may include 18 students who have been flagged as off-track in any one of the ABC indicators. 10 of these students may be paired to an after-school tutoring program to help address homework completion. 5 may be connected to an adult mentor for morning attendance check-ins, and 3 may be connected to a counselor to investigate further. The overall goal is to make sure that all students are receiving supports and your team is able to monitor their progress. In addition to these key ABC indicators, many schools have found it valuable to look at other information, such as formative assessments, student work, or social skill assessments to help them decide how to respond. For instance, while your team may be discussing a student's attendance as the key indicator, the team may also consider the student's connection to peers or adults in school and how this may impact attendance. In fact, there are student surveys, such as this one on student resiliency, that schools have used alongside a student's ABCs. However, as you examine these other data sources, we recommend that you use a small number of indicators that are used as flags in your system. Remember, using the ABCs can help you identify most of the students in need of intervention, and these other data sources can then help you make more informed decisions. Organizing and managing the data that you have in your school will help provide a foundation for the work that you are doing to build an early warning system and support all of your students. Easy-to-use, accessible data systems that help flag when students or groups of students have indicators will help as you move into the next set of videos and work on connecting this data to specific responses or interventions. This concludes our video on data indicators. In our next video, we will examine linking indicators to a multi-tiered response system. This will include a look at defining interventions, resource mapping, recommendations for tracking interventions, and recommendations for intervention analysis.